This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Friday, August 22nd, 2025. I'm Alex Brown. The U.S. Forest Service is moving forward with a wide-reaching management plan for the Hoosier National Forest that hopes to revitalize the region's ecosystem. The agency auctioned off a 39-acre timber plot this month, signaling the start of plans for controlled burns and logging on close to 38,000 acres over a 15-year period. Forestry expert Perry Seitzinger says certain tree species are having a detrimental impact on the forest.
The science is showing us that we are losing the oak hickory forest component. There are wildlife associated and dependent on oak and hickory, right? And so if we lose that component, we lose the wildlife that's dependent on it.
He added the Forest Service will plant new oak and hickory trees in areas that are cleared, leading to a healthier mix of young and old trees. Fort Wayne officials broke ground Thursday on the second phase of the first major single-family housing development on the city's southeast side in 50 years. Roosevelt Reserves, when fully completed, will feature 131 homes on 126 acres of land. Phase 2 of the project includes 30 new housing lots. Lucas Oil Stadium and Victory Field in downtown Indianapolis are set to get upgrades next year. The venues are among those designated for $35.2 million in planned improvements approved as part of the city's Capital Improvement Board's overall budget on Friday. The CIB anticipates a combined $211.7 million in tax and operating revenue for 2026, a drop of about 10% from its 2025 budget projection. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
At the 2025 Greater Elkhart Chamber of Commerce Economic Update this week, education leaders stressed the need for deeper collaboration between schools, colleges, and local businesses to prepare students for the rapidly changing workforce. Brandon Eakins, director of the Elkhart Area Career Center, emphasized how recent changes to Indiana's high school diploma requirements will increase the demand for career exposure, work-based learning, and employer engagement. He said the new system's SEALs, which replace traditional honors diplomas, require students to demonstrate employable skills and experiences.
If we don't have conversations as an entire community, we're never going to be able to fulfill for the students we serve. So as a community, how do we address that to ensure that our students are going to be able to fulfill those requirements? But better yet, how do we ensure that we create memorable opportunities that bring that talent back to our region after they graduate our K-12 system and whatever they do in the post-secondary? There is definitely something that your organization can provide in that K-12 continuum that is going to better prepare all of the students that we serve.
Eakins said many students know the products local companies make but have little understanding of how those organizations operate or the career opportunities inside them. He added that building relationships between schools and businesses early is critical. State corrections officials are backing away from earlier plans to close the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City once a new $1.2 billion facility opens in 2027, saying they now intend to keep the aging lockup operating for some time after the new prison site begins housing inmates. That's a change from the Indiana Department of Corrections' earlier consolidation plan laid out in 2023, which called for shuttering both Indiana State Prison and Westville Correctional Facility to save on staffing and operating costs. Instead, the DOC confirmed to the Indiana Capital Chronicle this week that Westville will close as originally planned, but the state prison will remain open indefinitely. After just 4 months into the role, Steve Baker is no longer president and CEO of Columbus Regional Health, effective immediately, the health system announced Thursday. While specific details regarding the move were not provided, a CRH spokesperson told Inside Indiana Business that Baker did not resign from the position. IIB reached out to Baker using multiple phone numbers believed to be associated with him, but he could not be reached for comment. Citing organizational policy, public relations and communications partner Kelsey DeClue told IIB, quote, CRH will not discuss details regarding the ending of his employment, end quote. As a result of Baker's departure, retired CEO Jim Bickle has returned to serve as interim CEO. Noblesville Mayor Chris Jensen is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, and entertainment, and beyond. Available now on the IBJ Media app or your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Curious about what's shaping law in Indiana? From court reforms and NIL rights to mental health courts and energy commissions, the Indiana Lawyer Podcast breaks down the biggest legal issues of our time. I'm your host, reporter Maura Johnson. Join me every other week for your insider guide to what matters in law and why it impacts you. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app or at ibjpodcasts.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media podcast network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.